We got a game in action right now. GA, his game, good like some lemon peppers. Trae Young with the mid-range. Look at the Hawks, looking to stay undefeated in this early season. How about the Fro? Had arguably the dunk of the year the other night. Jared Allen at it again.
Afro power.
It's rough. It's up with his Afro
See that business decision by Bogdanovich?
Yes,
Saw that.
Yes, sir.
Miami Heat blew out the defending champs.
Hey, shooter.
Their
I see
season
you.
opener.
That's another
Lead, hey,
Chris, I know a
lead
shooter
in
when I see
scoring.
you.
The Heat.
Oh, man.
What?
Man, the way they sharing that ball and scoring that ball.
The team they're facing, the Pacers, 0-2 under Rick Carlisle this season. Don't blame Miles Turner. 40, 10, and 3 blocks.
A career high?
Last time out.
Man.
Welcome to the CarMax pregame show. We have a doubleheader here on NBA TV, starting with the Heat and the Pacers, and then we have Phoenix and Portland as the nightcap. I'm Chris Miles. That's 3D, but here on this show, we call them Quarantine Lean because we're doing it like we're doing it to do it for TV.
Thank you very much.
Hey,
Thank you very much.
COVID hit, he got serious, lost some weight.
Yeah,
and that's my
good.
man, GA, who's
He's
always
looking
been
more like
impeccable
2D
shape.
right now. He's getting a little light over there.
Well, we got 8 games total tonight around the league. So let's start with the game that's on our air, the Miami Heat and the Indiana Pacers. And Tyler Hero. Here's a guy who, 3D, last season, he kind of looked like he regressed a bit, didn't look as if he was consistent. 27 in the opener, most ever by a Heat player, the season opener off the bench.
Yeah, GA and I were just conversing about it back in the locker room, and people forget this is the Hero we saw at the bubble. He's the one that gave you that little snarl after he was going fire in the finals, right? And then the word down in Miami, he came back to South Beach and he wasn't in a great shape. He didn't come back to training camp. Some people thought it might have been, a little bit of COVID, or he just didn't take the offseason as serious. And GA, you know this. One thing about Pat Riley, he may not call you out in public, but he'll call you when you knock on your door and say, come see me. and I think that's what we've heard from, the Ira Windemans of the world saying, no, you see a different Tyler Hero. That's why he's off to a great start, because he took care of his body this summer, and now you see it in his play.
You mentioned our good friend Ira Winderman, friend of the program. We have him on from time to time to break down the Heat. GA, he just reported that Kyle Lowry out for tonight's game. Lowry had 5 points, 1 for 6 from the field in his first game with Miami. What do you make of what's happening to start this season for Kyle Lowry?
Well, he hadn't looked really healthy even in the preseason for me. And some of that is when you are tentative when you're in a new situation. You gotta remember, this is a guy that's been in Toronto for a long time, doing things a certain way, and now he's got an entirely new team. And so when you're thinking a little bit, and you can see him laboring there with that injury, it takes away your ability to react and just play the game off instincts. And so I think it's going to take him a little while to get up to speed and get comfortable and develop the chemistry you need to have for this team. But I'm not concerned about him big picture. Hopefully he can get healthy here real soon and get back out there. But this Miami team, big picture, is starting to look like they're going to be a problem. And I'm not talking about the Buck game, because the Bucks, they must have spent 2-3 days in South Beach. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
They call it the South Beach.
Had the opening night, had a good opening
they
night.
got the ring,
got
they
their
beat
ring,
Brooklyn, feeling good.
Oh, no
but
question.
the way they played, though, how good they've been offensively in that first game, the bench, the depth they had there, it was impressive to watch. I want to see if they can build on that against an Indiana team that also is getting it done offensively.
More on Miami a little bit later on in the show. Let's switch to the Pacers now, because they've blown 2 huge leads in their first 2 games. And when I say huge, against Charlotte on Wednesday, they had a 23-point lead. Against Washington, they had a 9-point lead, but they were up by 4, less than 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Then they were up by 6 in overtime, 3D, and still lost that game. So what are you seeing with the Pacers and why they're struggling to hold those leads?
Well, I think the biggest thing is when Malcolm Brogdon's on the floor, we notice that the offense flows a lot smoother. Balls going from one side of the floor to the other. And I think the other night when we saw Miles Turner get hot, and Jay, you know this, sometimes when your big man gets hot and he's shooting more threes, everyone kind of stands around and watches. And I think it lost some of their defensive continuity. So I think Rick Carlisle's still going to have to figure some of those little things out down as the season wears on. But I'm not worried about Indiana as much as other people. I'm not worried about them, GA.
Yeah, the one concern, the bench hasn't been quite as good, even though they're putting up a lot of points. And then to DZ's point, defensively, they have not been able to get stops when they need them. And that's a big issue because in today's NBA with the skill level and the rules, you're not going to consistently hold people to 80, 90 points. What you got to do is be good in defense in terms of situations. And you've got to be able, when we need a big stop against when our defense is set, we got to be able to get that stop and finish it with the defensive rebound. They haven't been very good. They haven't been together in sync defensively. A lot of breakdowns. And then sometimes now you stop trusting what you're trying to do. So remember, new system, new philosophy with Rick Carlisle. It's going to take some time for them to figure it out. But I do like what I've seen from them thus far offensively.
Well, you mentioned Rick Carlisle, new system. It seems as if in the previous couple of years, it's been trying to figure out, okay, how do we keep Miles Turner being productive while Domantas Sabonis is turning into an all-star down low? Well, Sabonis averaging 30 a game in these first two games, and Miles Turner 40, 10, 3 blocks. Take us through how that's working for Indiana despite the losses.
Well, what I love to see with young players is growth. And this is a guy as a 7-footer who now is becoming a good decision maker out on the floor. Here, they run a little 4-5 pick and roll action. How about a pump fake and steps into the mid-range? That's a great read by him, and he's got the skill set to do this. And now they're going to run and fill those corners on transition. And why? Look how it opens up the floor. And then it's about making a read, but he doesn't stay out. Then he gets into attack mode, knowing it's hard to block a guy out when you come from that baseline three-point line, able to get to the offensive glass and get the finish. And then this one I love, where they're able to come down. He's there. He's going to catch it at the top. Look at the space, because bigs aren't comfortable coming all the way out there to guard. Montrezl Harrell didn't get out to contest. He's able to step in and knock down that triple. And this is the beauty of his game. Gets the block on one end and watch him run the floor. And again, doesn't run to the three-point line. He reads the play. He makes the right decision, understanding that's not a plus defender at the rim. He's not going to be able to contest me and stop me. And he's able to get all the way there. And I think the great thing about it is you're seeing he and Sabonis are starting to complement each other more so than maybe we've seen in the past. And I think that was a point of emphasis for Rick Carlisle, trying to figure out how I can get both those guys to be effective on the floor on both ends.
I mean, that's a key point, 3D. Sabonis still putting up 30 and almost 5 assists while Miles Turner is finding his offense.
That's why I'm not worried about it, because I believe in Rick Carlisle that he'll figure out the defense. But to Jay's point, Sabonis is an all-star. I mean, we know he's a two-way player. So now if you can get him and Miles playing together, scoring together, having each other's back interior on the defensive end, because we know Malcolm's going to do his thing. And the young fella, Chris Duarte, the rookie, oh my goodness.
He's the real deal.
So think about that. So to all of our points we're trying to make, new system, new coach, you got your all-stars, you're just trying to keep everyone healthy. I think Rick Carlisle over time will figure it out, and that's why big picture, I'm not worried about the Pacers.
Yeah, this particular matchup with these two teams, and you look at how they've started the season. Indiana, of course, 0-2, blowing those two leads. Miami with the big blowout win. What are you looking for in this particular matchup between these two?
I want to see if Indiana defensively can have a little more of an impact. And even though Turner's getting the 3 blocks, they still give up far too many good looks in the half court. I just don't think that that's an area where they've been able to kind of raise their level. And then I want to see if what we saw from Miami is sustainable offensively. I mean, they looked lights out, and some of that was just Milwaukee their lights were out.
Right.
I mean, that's just the reality.
Well, maybe they were still asleep, huh?
Yeah, no doubt. So now I think there's going to be more of a sense of urgency because the Pacers are a little desperate. You know, it's early, but the way they've lost both games, that's not going to sit well if you're
about 3.2 miles away, to say down to the Highlight Factory, that he's ready. Last year in the playoffs, think about it, he missed most of the playoffs and came towards the end because of the injury.
And hit 6 threes.
Come on, now think about the way he's playing now in those last few games in the playoffs. If they'd have had that early in the playoff run, GA, maybe things were different for the Hawks. Yeah. So now you're saying this good play, Hunter's good play, Trey's off to a great start. Collins, everyone is still buzzing off the alley-oop dunk when he got Jared Allen in the preseason. So, you know, Schlenker's done a heck of a job bringing in the right veterans. I think Gallinari is still trying to get healthy as well. Yeah. So this team has to realize what they're doing, stay in the moment, and keep playing for one another.
And also the patience that the organization showed with him, because he wasn't ready early. And we've seen it a lot with young players that teams will give up on them in that second, third year. and then they blossom. And I think you're seeing that with Cam Reddish. He's what we would say figuring it out in terms of how he can impact the game at this level.
You know, if you talk to anyone with any Hawks organization, they'll say, oh, we overachieved last year, right? Like, and I think we all view it as that. So what are the expectations this year now that they've been to the Eastern Conference Finals?
I think to get back. Listen, their roster, when they're healthy, I think they can really play with anybody. And I think the confidence you get from what they accomplished last year will help them. Remember, their best player is still getting better. Trae Young is still his best basketball is ahead of him. You know, all these other young guys that they have, Collins and Hunter and Herta, and you talked about Reddish, all those guys are getting better. And the beauty of their situation is as they're winning while they're getting better. You know, they're not in rebuild mode. They're winning now. And when they get healthy, and with having Nate as a coach too, that sense of accountability, you know, and the focus on the defensive end, Atlanta's for real.
I like what I see, and I think it's time for I guess for a lot of people here in Atlanta, because the city has gone through so much of winning that they're afraid to believe in what this young team is doing. I said, wait a minute, guys. Most of the guys on this team weren't even born when Dominique and Joe Johnson, all these, the history we're talking about. So Trae Young don't know anything about that. So believe in what he's done and keep supporting this team if you live in Atlanta.
Yeah, certainly a city that was a sleeping giant as far as basketball fandom is concerned. They're awake now. They have their star in Trae Young, who did make the All-Star team last year. Think he'll make it this year. I got an inclination that's going to happen. Miami Heat, Indiana Pacers, taking off. Jimmy Butler, don't forget, 2 seasons ago, but more like a year ago, had the Heat in the finals. They blew out the Bucks in the season opener by 42. Your defending champs. Maybe that was a message that they're ready to play this year. They face off against the Pacers in their second game of the season in a few minutes. Miles Turner, 40, 10. 3 blocks in his last game, but the Pacers 0-2 on the season, having blown 2 significant leads in their first 2 games. Welcome back to the CarMax pregame show. Let's again go with the Miami Heat. GA lost in the first round last year, playing in the finals the season before. In the way that they came out in game 1, are they legit contenders in the Eastern Conference?
I think I thought they would be a legit contender coming in because of what they were able to do in the offseason. And then when you factor in how much better Tyler Herro is playing off the bench, remember, and also Kyle Lowry hadn't figured it out yet. So I think they are. Bam's going to be a better player. Jimmy's still playing at a really high level. Duncan Robinson, like they do a great job of addressing needs. They understood they needed to up the ante in terms of what they had in their backcourt. They knew that Tyler and those guys coming off the bench, they had to improve that roster. They got P.J. Tucker over there now with that championship pedigree. And their culture is such that it's always been about championships. And they have a sense of urgency. That group knows if we're not there this year, they're going to make a lot of changes going into the next season. So they always got their foot to the fire, Miami, because of that organization. And I think absolutely. And then factor in all the uncertainty. What's going on in Philly? What's going on in Brooklyn? You know, Milwaukee's dealing with a lot of injuries right now. You know, if you're Miami, they got to feel really good about the makeup of their roster as compared to everybody else they're going to deal with in that Eastern Conference.
Yeah, with all the uncertainty in the Eastern Conference, Chris, it's all about staying healthy, and you bring in, I think, Markieff Morris is on the squad now for more toughness, the culture that Miami brings. But let's call it Duncan Robinson and Tyler Herro. They have to shoot the ball like they did in the bubble. That was the difference. Remember when Jimmy didn't shoot the ball well? One of those 2 guys, if not both of those guys, shot the blood out of the basketball. That has to be there. And now when you bring Kyle Lowry in, he's a winner. The same toughness will make big shots. But if those other guys, role players, aren't doing their roles along with Bam and Jimmy setting the table, then no, they're not in the mix. But I think now, with the right mindset, and to GA's point, I think I'll put them in the mix because the East is kind of in flux.
Okay, you guys seem bullish on the Heat. What about the Pacers? Because they're starting, again, 0-2. But if you watch those first 2 games, through the first 3 quarters, it looked like, they're cruising to victories. So what should we expect from Indiana?
we're going to expect for Rick Carlisle to continue to coach this team with the new faces. They're dealing with a few injuries always, like most of the NBA. But at the end of the day, I like what they have when you talk about Miles Turner and Malcolm Brogdon as their two, heads, so to speak. And you got Sabonis as an all-star. So I'm not worried about them big picture. The first couple games, they're competing. The defense, I know they'll tighten up.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I mean, they've done something that's only happened once in the history of our league. You got to go back to 1955. When Fort Wayne lost their first 2 games by combined 2 points.
Good stuff.
So they could very easily be 2-0 right now. They really could be. So I think, like DZ just said, I think they're going to be fine. I think they do have a good enough foundation for Rick to build off of. And I just like the fact that we're now seeing Turner and Sabonis kind of figured it out from a chemistry standpoint.
That's a good point that you make. When you lose games by a single point, is that just? I know you play a full 82 and it's a long season, but is that tough when you let 2 go just like that?
Absolutely, it's always tough. Listen, you can get beat by 30 and it doesn't even register.
Sometimes you rather get beat by 30.
Because nobody's 30 points better than you, right?
Right?
But when you lose those 1-possession game, 1-point games, those stay with you a little longer because you can go through 40 different scenarios in that course of that game that if you've done differently, maybe you win the game.
There he is. There's the future senator.
They've been playing without Karis LeVert as well, and that's a big part of
T.J. Warren.
who they're going to be, especially in the backcourt, 3D. So explain to us when Karis LeVert is back on the court, healthy, teaming up with Brogdon, how that makes them a different team dynamically.
Well, first of all, LeVert is just like, hey, we're struggling, right? Here's the ball. Go carry us for a game or 2. He can do that. And then we're struggling just to get a bucket, period. T.J. Warren, just go get us a bucket. You're talking about 2 guys offensively, night in and night out. When you're struggling, they can go get you a bucket. So when you get them back, you get them in part of the flow and the chemistry once again. Defensively, I know Rick Carlisle will get them right.
Yeah, you guys mentioned Chris Duarte averaging 21 points per game in his first 2 games and 13th pick in the draft. PJ Tucker, he's shooting that corner 3.
Position. Oh, man. Some athleticism. Chris Paul.
Chris Paul is a ball-handling master. They call him the point guard.
You are the man, Chris Paul. Paul against Green. He'll go all the way to the hole. Put it up off the glass. And knocks it in with a second to go. Chris Paul.
GA, we've had a ton of point guards, elite point guards who could score, who could pass. But Chris Paul's by himself now with 20,000 career points, 10,000 assists. Why is that? Why is he the only person that's been able to do that in NBA history?
Because he's that good. Like, in all seriousness, there have been very few point guards that from day one when they entered the league were dominant. I mean, dominant. And Chris Paul was one of them. Isaiah was like that. I mean, you think about the great Steve Nash, right? 2-time MVP. But Steve Nash did not look like a great player the first 4 years of his career. He got traded. He was being booed by the home crowds. He was really struggling, and then he finally figured it out. And so he's earned everything he's gotten. But guys like Chris Paul and Isaiah, I put those guys in the same category with the exception of the championships. But the fact that he came in from day one after his sophomore year in college and just completely changed the game. His ability to control tempo. He's a captain out there. He's a leader. And, we talk so much about the injuries, but, you have to play a lot of games to put up 20,000 and 10,000. You obviously have played in a lot of basketball games to have that sustained level of success. And you just got to tip your cap to him because he's still playing. I mean, he was brilliant against the Lakers the other night. I mean, that guy still's playing at as high a level as anybody in our league, and maybe not as flashy, but every bit as productive as anybody playing that position.
Being productive, being consistent, and let's take it a little deeper for some of our viewers. There was a point in time where certain stars said, well, I don't want to play with Chris Paul. He dribbles too much. He over-dribbles. He doesn't play like Jason Kidd, where Jason Kidd made his name famous by throwing the ball ahead. So when he went to OKC and turned that young franchise around and took them to the playoffs, that's what I'm more impressed with. Late in his career, he's still dominant and put his imprint on the game, and what he did for Phoenix last year to go all the way to the finals. That's when I step back and say, now we know why they call him point guard.
Yeah, you know what you think of? Chris Paul is like a parent. You know how like when you're a kid, you don't think the parent knows a whole lot. And
you question every minute.
You question everything. And it's not until you finally get out the house, or in his case, he ain't on your team, that you realize just how good he was. Because it wasn't just what he did. Think about the Rockets with James Harden.
Yep. He's one hamstring away, right?
Yeah, like that guy is a winner. Goes to Phoenix. They go to the finals.
Well, we get to see two top 75 guys live tonight right here on NBA TV, and Chris Paul, Damian Lillard, that game at 10 o'clock, part of our doubleheader. Something else happened, people, with the Los Angeles Lakers, because Chris Paul was giving...
It's a fight. It's a fight.
Look at this.
Chris, I don't like you, Chris. Chris, you talk too much. Chris, you don't pass the mic enough, Chris. No, Chris, I miss you, bro.
You ate all my pizza, man.
Man, what them lemon peppers?
Hey,
Who's
man.
got the lemon peppers?
Come on, man. You got some ranch on them lemon peppers, man?
All right, but let's actually hear what Dwight Howard had to say about this.
We squashed it right then and there. You know, we just had a disagreement about something that was on the floor. So we both very passionate about winning. We didn't want to lose this game, you know, so we both were just, you know, very passionate. We got it out the way. We grown men, things happen. But we are going to talk, squash it. There's no issue between me and him. And that's my brother. That's my teammate. You know, that's what I told him. So I'm always be here for you, no matter what. I'm always fight for you. We do whatever I can to help this team win. He said the same thing, you know, so we're good. We squashed it. There's no need to try to make it bigger than something else.
3D, what Dwight said there, does that change how you viewed the altercation between him and Anthony Davis?
No, not at all. And if they had never won a championship together just a few years ago, I may have questioned it a little bit, GA. And I know a lot of social media was like, oh, maybe it's because of 75th, you know. I'm like, come on, people, stop it. And when you go play for the Lakers and you're playing with LeBron James, it's about winning the championship. That's it. It's not about making the playoffs. We saw last year when LeBron and AD got hurt, they were the 2 seed and dropped all the way down to the 7 seed. So I think this team understands you got to take care of business early. They're an older team. You got to find the chemistry. So I didn't overreact to the altercation, GA.
I actually would even go a step further. I thought it was really good for them because when you're like early in the season, when you show it matters that much, that tells you that they have a sense of urgency. They know they're struggling. They know they're not who they're going to want to be, and they're not okay with it. And so, I mean, to me, this stuff, well, these unit when we play, this happened all the time.
All the time back in the 90s.
You know, every game wasn't televised,
right,
so you didn't see it to the level we see it now. But I didn't have, and it's the way they dealt with it after, because they both talked about how, look, we squashed, because that's how it's supposed to be. No, we don't let it linger. We don't let it fester. If there's something that needs to be said, we say it now. Now, ideally, they would have liked to have done that in the locker room, but this is not, you know, uncommon. That stuff happens, and that's why you see even now, they've already squashed it. They just talked about it. It looked like it might have been a miscommunication. And listen, remember 2 years ago when they won it, you saw AD and LeBron have similar scenarios where they were holding each other accountable, and that's what I'm saying. Like, when you're trying to win, sometimes it gets uncomfortable. And you got to be comfortable with that.
3D, what's behind their 0-2 start?
Chemistry.
Yeah.
That's it. Nothing else. Think about it. You go back to the preseason, guys are in and out. And that's one of the things, because we're old school, is like, I would have rather all the guys played at least a quarter or half every game and went and sit down versus taking a whole game off, 2 games off, 3 games off. And as we get older, you just can't just hit a switch and think first 2 games you're going to play perfect, you know, harmonic basketball. So that's why I think now it's going to take a little while for the chemistry to kick in and get some of those guys like Kendrick Nunn, those guys back into the flow as well.
Remember, they got 8 new guys.
Yeah, chemistry.
8.
Yeah.
That's a lot of turnover for a roster. I don't care how good LeBron and AD are like that. It just takes time for those guys to figure it out. And if you think about it, the Lakers, the year they won it, they got off to a little bit of a slow start. When he was in Miami, they got off to a very slow start. And again, when you got this kind of talent, it takes a little while for them all to figure out how this is going to flow and how it's going to work. And listen, they could have some growing pains here early on. There's no doubt about it. But ultimately, if they're healthy, I think they're going to be a factor.
I'd rather have him now versus getting off to a false start and have some false security and then later seeing get smacked.
Well, certainly we've seen Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard and LeBron James
Jimmy
play
boy.
against this Miami Heat team.
Jimmy boy.
Win a championship
I got to
against them.
did Kyle Lowry get his daughter a nice birthday gift? That's what I want.
Got it for 100 stacks.
He said 100. Hey,
gracious.
Wait, what?
y'all, you didn't hear about that?
Oh, man.
Go check it out on
Hey,
social
Shaq.
we got our
Hey,
secret
Shaq.
handshake, man.
Make sure you get Trey, you know, something.
Yeah, I need to get Tyson. I got